Welcome to episode 126 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Breitman. Second episode of the day. Started yesterday with a preview on the offense, just in terms of players that I'm thinking of and looking at and projecting as contributors this season that haven't been in the past or will emerge into bigger roles. Check out that episode. And then today, wanted to follow up on the defensive side of the ball. I did do an episode earlier in the day on Rutgers men's basketball playing Mississippi State and Princeton, and those matchups and what that looks like in terms of just analytics and also on the court. It's going to be two great games. So defense, obviously we know Rutgers defense was improved last year. Um, as kind of typical, right? They kind of wore thin in November. The offense took its toll on the defense, as it has many times over the years. A lack of run game, a lack of sustained offense, just puts a lot of pressure on the defense. Injuries started to pile up, and November, unfortunately, I mean, if you look at that Minnesota game, Minnesota ran at will on Rutgers, and they really weren't able to stop them. That was arguably their worst game of the season when we thought they actually had a chance to win that. And Michigan State, they could have won that game too. The offense actually had a good game. Actually, I think I'm confusing it. Michigan State was, I thought, a really disappointing defensive performance. Minnesota, they just, there was no offense to help out. That was a 31-0 loss. So my point is the defense showed a lot of signs, especially early on. They were much improved. There's more talent there. There's more depth. They did, start off the season with injuries. But there's real hope. There's real hope that this season Rutgers defense can become a top half of the Big Ten defense. They were flirting with it for a while last year. They finished, probably I would say 8th or 9th if you look at all the stats. But they're probably, if you just did a power rankings of defense, they were probably, around 9th, probably I'd say. But at any rate, we know the stars that are back. Aaron Lewis, obviously, Maya Nahanatu's back. The defensive line, the key is how much depth can they develop? Can they play 8? Can they play closer to 10? That's what the best defensive lines do. So there's two people that I'm looking at as potential for a big impact, and one was a transfer, Isaiah Aitan from Ole Miss. Marquise Watson, coach there, brought him in. He played 23 games the last 2 years at Ole Miss. He started a handful, defensive tackle, but I think he's a guy that could have an immediate impact and integrate right away. And he's going to provide depth, and he's a talented guy. And that was a huge win. And, Marquise Watson, he's been tearing up the high school recruiting, class of 24, doing an amazing job. But I think Eaton's going to end up being a really big pickup for Rutgers. And just his experience in the SEC, he didn't put up huge numbers, but I think he's going to be he's going to get some snaps. He's going to add depth. Then you have Kenny Fletcher, right? Kenny Fletcher was a really highly regarded recruit out of Delran, and he played 11 games last season. He didn't play a ton of snaps, but he started to get some action, especially towards the end of the season. And he actually, the last 2 games of the season, he had a sack against Penn State and a sack against Maryland. He needed to add some weight, waiting for the spring rosters online, waiting to see if he's gone up a little bit since then when the roster comes out tomorrow at the start of training camp. But he's a super talented kid. He's relentless motor. He's strong. He's got good mechanics. I think he can really emerge this year. And whether it's just, as an edge rusher, I think he's a guy that might be able to move around a little bit with different looks. They're going to be able to have more versatility just in terms of, I think, because of the depth. And we'll get to linebacker in a second. But Kenny Fletcher, I think, is ceiling super high. And I'm really excited to see what he could do this year. And then a linebacker. Last year was super thin. Pretty much, you had Jameer Wright Collins as a backup, converted. He's, done an admirable job there. But you had Deion Jennings, who had a very good year, and Tyreen Powell emerge. They were really the only 2 linebackers. Rutgers played only 2 linebackers. They like to do that. They play 5 defensive backs. But I'm curious to see, do they go any 4-3 this year? Maybe in spots, maybe in certain matchups. But point being, you have Mo Toure back, who led Rutgers in sacks in 20 and 21. And he's a hybrid guy. He could line up on the line. He could line up at linebacker as an edge rusher. But I'm super excited about Moses Walker, former 4-star, tore his ACL just like um, Teray did last year. So both of them are coming off torn ACLs. So we'll see how they hit the ground running, so to speak, at the start of camp. But I think Moses Walker is going to end up being a player that you're not going to be able to keep off the field in November. I think he's just going to get better and better. Obviously, he has a lot to learn. He missed his entire first year, so I'm sure he picked up some on the film room, but he's going to have to experience things on the field for himself. But I mean, he's uber talented, and he could listen. He's got a very high ceiling. I don't want to say. Well, I'll just say it. Like I think he could end up being the best linebacker on the team. I really do. So his health is paramount, of course, and Teray obviously. So getting those two guys. If you have Fletcher emerge, Eton, I didn't mention Keontae Hamilton. Can he take another step forward? There's a lot to like on this defense, just in terms of potential, talent, depth. And then you go to the secondary. Obviously, safety, you're replacing Avery Young and Christian Izian. Desmond Igbenusin returns. Your Rutgers plays three safeties typically. So Igbenusin, had a good year last year. He did have some injury issues, but I really like him there. And then I think you're going to see Michael Flip Dixon, the Minnesota transfer. I think he's going to slide right into that Izian type role. He's played 30 Big Ten games, started 6. He knows Harasimiak, defensive coordinator. I think he's going to really have a pretty seamless transition and make a big impact right away. He's a bigger safety. He really fits the mold of Izian, just in terms of, and that those are huge shoes to fill. Don't get me wrong, but I think physically he looks the part, and he's got 30 Big Ten game experience. That's quite a bit. So that's a huge hole to fill. And then, who steps up in that third safety spot along Igbenusin and most likely Dixon? I think Shaquan Loyal, Shaquan Loyal doesn't return that interception for a touchdown against Temple. Rutgers very well could have lost that game. So he had flashes last year. He's got to be more consistent. He's got to stay healthy. But I think he has a chance to really be a big factor there. And then the defensive backs, you have Max Melton back. You have Robert Longerbeam back, Kassan Abraham. Eric Rogers is a transfer that came in. He has a chance to make an impact. The Amonkwa brothers are, Thomas Amonkwa transferred in. Charles Amonkwa was on the team. So, yeah, you have some younger guys that potentially could step up as well. But I really think Dixon, Loyal, and Igbenusin at safety. You have Melton and Longerbeam at the defensive backs. And, Eric Rogers is going to be a really intriguing transfer. And maybe they move, I just think there's versatility within the personnel, and some guys that could play multiple spots or hybrid roles. It's going to be really interesting to see how they mix and match, how they, game plan for certain situations, but also adjust during the game. And will we see more aggression? I think that ties to the offense. If the offense can be more consistent, if the offense can sustain drives and put points on the board, again, if they could be average, they could score in the 20s and be somewhat consistent in terms of being able to move the ball, I think that will allow the Rutgers defense to be able to be a little bit different in terms of variety, a little more aggressive, rather than, having to kind of tread water a little bit at times, knowing that, it's a good chance you're going to be back on the field pretty quick, and the depth wasn't there with injuries and just development. So, like I said, super excited about the overall ceiling of the defense. Just checking to see if I missed anyone that I wanted to bring up on the defense. Renee Conga is another guy in the defensive line. I think could play a bigger role. He's had some moments. Keir Price, the Syracuse transfer, he played limited action last year. We'll see what he can do. Troy Rainey had converted. So you have Jordan Thompson, Wesley Bailey back. Wesley Bailey was a revelation last year. Who's going to be the next Wesley Bailey on the D line? Last thing I wanted to mention was a wild card just in terms of special teams. Is I'm really curious to see how the kicking battle goes between Judd McAtamey and Jay Patel. Jay Patel from South Brunswick. He's got a pretty big leg. McAtamey was 12 of 18 from field goal attempts last year. He did struggle from 30 to 39 yards. He missed 4 kicks there. So he missed two 50-plus yarders, which, isn't really a concern. But, under 40 yards, you got to be pretty close to automatic. I know it's college, but still, like, you got to be 80%. And so he's only got 1 year left. Jay Patel's got multiple years left. He's a local kid. I think, and I don't know, I'm just throwing one out there. But all reports, he's got a big leg. He was a highly rated recruit. If it's close, and maybe at the start of the season they do give McAtamey the chance to keep the role, but it would not shock me at all if it's close, if Patel ultimately wins over the job, or if Patel gets a chance at some point in the season, because I don't think that the talent level is too far apart, and Patel's got multiple years left. So why not? If all things are kind of equal, I think having more eligibility wins out because you have a chance to develop Patel over time. And I like his attitude and just his confidence. And listen, I hope Judd McAtamey wins the job again and has a heck of a season. But he definitely struggled at times last year. So I think he's opened the door for that competition. And it would not shock me at all if Jay Patel eventually emerges at the start as a starting kicker. That'll be something to watch for at training camp for sure. Starting Thursday, August 3rd, I'll have plenty of coverage throughout training camp and plenty of preview articles coming on the ScarletFaithful.com. Thanks for listening and watching once again here at